Hello and welcome back, Internet family. We are today going to be talking about a topic that I had a lot of reservations about, um, but it's about grief and loss. Um, I really want to talk about grieving the loss of my mother and of my second nephew, um, and other members of my family as well. So, a lot of the people that I see in practice, um, I hear the same things kind of over and over. And one of them is always, grieving loss of a relative. And people, I think, aren't sure how to grieve. I think feel like people don't, everyone expects grief to look exactly the same. So for most people, that's, well, they didn't cry. They had a funeral and they didn't cry or whatever. And it's like maybe crying isn't their way of expressing their grief. Um, Sometimes you just don't have it in you at that moment to do because the realness of the situation hasn't set in. Um, I'll start talking about my mom a little bit. I talked about her in one of the previous videos, but I feel like I can't say enough about her. My mom was a great lady. And the thing is, she was a lady. She is what I hold as my standard for what a lady should be. My mom didn't go out without her pressed powder on. She didn't go to the store without, making sure that she looked good. And if she had on like a mushroom cap or something, she wasn't getting out the car. Don't ask her. Um, Even in the house, my mom would sit around she would wear like house coats and like they were always like this. Like she went out the way to make sure she looked great all the time, and I really loved that. I remember like man, being in my house on Sunday morning was amazing. Like you would smell perfume and fried chicken or perfume and crawfish stew, and that let you know it was time for church. I mean, red. The perfume red on top of crawfish stew meant that not only had my mama cooked that morning, but she was going to church. So you had one of two options. You could either go to my mom's church, which started early, which was Bright Morning Star, or you can go to my dad's church, which was St. Charles, and they started later. But you were going to be in there late because Reverend Truehill, God love him, God bless his heart. When I tell you that man could take you on an expedition to find the word of God, I don't know where we would end up. We were like Gilligan for real. We only set out for a 3-hour tour. We got shipwrecked somewhere around Gilgal. God bless him. All the same. God bless him. But I used to love to go to church with her whenever I could drag myself up that early. But usually I ended up at my dad's church, and that's the church that I grew up in. But you were going to church. If you were in my mother's house, you didn't have an option. You were going to church on Sunday mornings because it was what we did. Um, and I'm happy that I grew up that way because it instilled those values in me and it gave me that discipline. But my mom was so amazing because she was smart and she was funny and she just always seemed to have time for people, and I always loved that about her. She was the first in her family to go to college, and like that was a big thing for her. Education was really big for her, but it was also big that we, as her kids, got an education. Um, she was also big on family. Like one of the only family pictures that we have to this day is a picture of an event that my mom put together that had both sides of the family there. And I remember I'm looking for that picture. I know somebody has it and I'll find it. But I love that picture. I just love the fact that everybody was together. And it's like the kids are like playing under the table and everyone's just smiling and everybody looks so happy. And it's just like one of my favorite memories. My mom was the holiday person, and now I'm the holiday person, oddly enough. But I love that time, and I love just her making pie or cake in the kitchen, and us fighting over who gets to lick the spoon, which is hilarious in hindsight. But anyway, um, yeah, and so losing her so suddenly, it really didn't give me a chance to let grief set in because I was still like, hey, I don't get it. I get it, but I don't get it. So I don't think I really had emotions around that until I was like a freshman in college, and then it all kind of hit me. And I found myself like, I need to see somebody. And that was, I think, the first time I really actually sought out a therapist because I felt like I was still waiting to process something that happened when I was 7. And at this point, I was like 18, 19 years old. My nephew was a little bit of a different story. So, my second nephew, um, man, Matthew was a ball of light, but he was a fighter. He was born with like a heart defect, and um, he he was probably the strongest little man I've ever met. I remember sitting in the hospital with him. I remember being there when he was born. Yeah, so like my sister has somehow roped me into being in the delivery room twice for what looks like a massacre or a car accident. But needless, I love her. I'd do anything for her. But oh my gosh, I can't do that one again. I think we're done. I hope she's done because I'm done. Um, Beyond that, though, my little man was such a fighter, and his heart defect, I mean, it was something that we couldn't control, and it was kind of like all at once. Um, at about the 9-month mark, he passed away. And I think I was so hurt about that because it was just like, it seemed so unfair. I think whenever you lose a kid of any type, it just feels really unfair. And it took a while to really get over that. And I remember at that time, my coping was probably the worst. I was the ringleader, man. I would stop off from leaving work. At that time, I worked in hotels, and man, Specs, the liquor store, was like my first stop. I'm going to get a box of liquor to drink over the course of this weekend. And I mean, I sip during the week too. And I mean, I think it was how we were coping, but at some point, I remember looking around and just kind of thinking, like, we can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And I'm grateful that my family kind of took my lead on that one, and everybody just kind of cleared everything up because yeah, man, it was hard, but prayer, our faith, beyond that, being willing to talk about it. Nothing was like, oh well, we didn't act like it wasn't happening. We addressed the issues. The thing about it is when you can disperse your pain, it helps. We gave each other a chance to share the pain with one another, and that helped lighten the load a little bit. um Aside from my mom and my nephew, we had a few losses in the family, especially in this past like maybe 5 or 10 years. um I lost like some very important people to me. My mom had 9 brothers and sisters. My dad has a brother and a sister, and man, they're just really cool people. And you know, I, I won't talk about all of them because man, this video could be hours long. But a few that really hit me kind of hard were my godfather, who's my mom's brother, Big Fred. Uh, I always felt like he was kind of the heartbeat of our family, if that makes any sense. Like he's the one who had the blues parties, and he was the one you could always find dancing and just joking and laughing. And he probably had the most infectious smile of anybody I have ever met in my life. And I remember I used to always just watch the way he interacted with everybody, and I was like, man, I wish I could be like that when I got older. He was that person that when he showed up, people were excited that he was there. And to me, like, that is something that I never forgot in all this time. And he's just an amazing person. He's just always been an amazing, an awesome person, and somebody that I definitely keep close in my heart. Another person that we lost was my dad's sister. Um, Much like my mom, man, my I called her nanny, but she wasn't my godmother or anything. But I called her nanny because she was my brother's godmother, and I always heard him call her that, so I called her that. Again, a lady. Man, she was smart and funny, and oh my God, like just her sense of humor was something beautiful. She encouraged me a lot, and I take a lot from her. Just I always felt like her reach may have exceeded her grasp, but she understood that you could be a royal no matter where you are and no matter what your lineage is. because, man, if I ever met a modern day queen, she was one. Um, she knew how to make the most of any and every situation. Super creative. She loved to cook. I remember times when she would make she was a perfectionist, which is probably where I get that from. She would cook things, and if they didn't come out right, she wouldn't hesitate to toss it. I remember so many cakes that my dad and uncle were eating out of the pan. Man, that tunnel of fudge cake, they were eating that out the pan, and they were like, "It's good. I don't care what you say. Like, we're gonna eat it out this pan, but you're not gonna throw it away." But she was just that kind of person. Always funny, always amusing. I remember she kept a room, and I think I really admired this. She would keep a room in her house, and it was just always pristine. Like, you could take pictures in there, and every now and again she might put like one of her collections on display in there, but it was a pristine space in her house, and it was the one space that, everybody did not go. You didn't just go in there and sit down. You didn't just go in there and put your feet up. It was a space, and it taught me really in my life to keep certain things inviolate. Don't let everybody trample over everything. Like, it's okay to keep that space for yourself. I learned that from her, and I always keep that. Um, my mom's sister passed away, um, and she was, man, if my uncle was the heartbeat, I think she was probably the head of the family. She was my mom's oldest sibling, and man, T was like the best. Okay, like she was the best cook. She was she was. I don't like if we had a big mama, so to speak, that was her. I mean, she was wise. Like, she was a lady who, I mean, I don't think she completed like middle school, but because she took care of all of her younger siblings, but man, she was wise beyond anything that books could ever teach you. And I think a lot of like my southern wisdom comes from her. She was just, no nonsense type of lady, but man, she cared about you. She cared about people. She did her best. She spent years and years. She worked for the priest, and she was just an amazing lady. And I mean, like, losing her was definitely a hard one. Um, she had dementia, and every time I saw her, she recognized me, up until the very last visit. And I think then I knew it was probably coming to an end, because she would always recognize me, call my name out, give me a hug. And this last time, it was kind of not so much. She didn't quite recognize me. But losing her was difficult, but I think for me, remembering all of the positive things that I take away from them, and remembering all the ways that they will always live on, because spirit never dies, man. Like, if you don't believe in a more faith-based thought, look at it in the terms of science. I mean, you can't destroy energy. It's just transferred. So I feel that, her spirit is here. Whenever I hear one of those really boisterous laughs, I know she's here. Whenever I travel to a new place, I immediately think of my aunt, like, because my dad's sister, because I remember how she was about traveling and being different places and seeing new things. Whenever I hear a blues song, man, any one of them, don't talk about the hole in the wall, last $2, tiptoe in the bedroom, you name it. My uncle comes to mind. Man, it's just a good times and good memories. And I think that for so many, grief and loss can be combated by remembering those good times. Don't be afraid to go through those old picture books. Don't be afraid to listen to old music that you enjoyed, or do something that you enjoyed doing with them, because that's what keeps them alive, man. Again, there's so many more people that I would love to talk about in this video, but I don't want it to run for, an hour and a half. So I'll stop there. Remember that when you're grieving, you don't grieve alone. Find someone to share that grief with. Find someone to disperse that pain with, because oftentimes they're dealing with the same thing and they're looking for someone to share it with. Um, Remember, love yourself, love someone else today. We'll all be better for it. Thank y'all. Love you, man.